Hello, this is Clarity Design. I'm in Photoshop cs5.5 and I'm just going to take a little bit of time to take you through some of the ways you can make selections in Photoshop. I'm not going to achieve any great result, I'm just going to take you through some of the options so you've got some tools to use. And one of the key things I'm going to be showing here is how to interact with these objects without destroying the originals, which means you can always go and grab more resources if you need to. Obviously I've got here a crocodile skin which I've imported and placed. I've then gone and rasterized the layer so it's not a smart object anymore, and I'm ready to start interacting with it. So I'm going to go down this selection list and then we'll have a look at a couple of other options as well. The first thing that we've got here obviously is to make a marquee. You can see there's different options at the top. If you hover over any of these options, it will give you, it will tell you what it's to do, but you can actually use shortcut keys as well. So if I just go here, let's just drag a selection out, obviously a basic square selection. Now if I press shift, that allows me to add more to that selection, and if I press alt on the left hand side of the keyboard, that will allow me to remove sections from that selection, and that's true of every selection tool that we're going to use really. So that means we can make a selection. Now once I've done that, I can press Ctrl C and Ctrl V down at the bottom left hand corner of the keyboard, and that allows me to copy out part of that selection. I don't just make selections using squares, that would be a bit limiting. We've got other shapes as well, obviously the ellipse tool, single row marquee, etc. So we'll just do a couple of ellipses as well. Let's generate a few more shapes. So I'll just press shift again and just add a couple of shapes in there, and then make it a bit more interesting by pressing alt and removing a shape from there as well. So we've got some kind of hollow loops there, that's quite nice. Okay, so I'll just press Ctrl C, Ctrl V, and now I've got two layers, okay, which I can move independently. They're overlapping at the moment, so I can actually move that independently, and this one independently as well. And I can set that up to generate selections. Two different layers, again I can switch them off independently, switch them on, and I'm all good to go. I'm going back to the layer of the texture here. Perhaps one of the more useful tools down here, we've got magnetic lasso tool, the polygon lasso tool, and the lasso tool. The lasso tool is obviously freehand, and that generates a selection. And then we've got, oh, sorry, wrong one. And then we've got the polygon tool, which is useful when cutting out something that's got a lot of square edges to it. But other than that, it's not going to be too useful. Just to finish that off, I just double click with the mouse, and that's how I finish that shape off. And then you've got a slightly more useful magnetic tool, which means that it will try and stick to strong tone changes in the area that you're drawing around. This can be quite useful with difficult selections of small areas, but it can be quite difficult to use as well. You can see that over here it's not being very accurate at picking that up. It's struggled because there's not much change there. And you can play around with that until you're happy. I mean, that's the start of a selection. I suppose actually if I was doing this for real, I might just switch straight to this tool down at the bottom here, the quick mask mode, and that means that I can actually go in there and start editing that itself. So we'll do that now, just to edit this little selection. You see I've got a problem here, got a problem over here, so I'll just switch that on. You can see that actually what I need to do is add in some red here, and tidy that selection. To do that I'm going to use a paintbrush, so with this quick mask tool selected, I can go to the paintbrush, and I can actually select different kinds of paintbrushes. That's useful because it, let's just go to white and I'll show you. So this is, I just make that brush a lot bigger. So if I just click here, you can see that it's going to be removing or making a new area of selection. The nice thing about that is, well, I'll show you in a second, but it will keep that nice fuzzy edge that's on the outside edge, and this is one of the only ways you can get that nice selection of the textured edge on the selection. Let's go to something that's a little bit more sensible in terms of the brush. So we'll just get a hard edge brush, and I'm going to switch it back to black, which means it's going to block out areas from the selection. So red is blocked out and no colour. And again, I could make this smaller and more accurate. I'm not going to bother right now, but I could just play around with that. So if you've got errors, small errors with an edge selection, this might be a way you wanted to tackle it. To turn that back into a selection, just deselect there, and you've got your selection. I'll just show you what that looks like. Ctrl C, Ctrl V, and there's your two selections. You see that nice edge that you've got on there. So that's quite a useful tool. You see that this edge is really pretty harsh actually at the moment, not very nice at all. It would need a bit more care than I've given it. Let's have a look at some other tools. I'll zoom back out. We'll just go and get a new image. We'll place a new image for the next ones, I think. So I'll just go and get place, and then I'm going to place this Rolex image that I've got here. You see this rough view, it looks like a really low res image. It's going to revamp that as soon as I click on the tick, and then it's got the full resolution image in there. You can see that also when it's put it in as a smart object, and that means that the computer knows where this image is, and if the image gets changed then it will update it in Photoshop when we next reopen it. I don't want that connection to exist anymore, so I'm just going to right click and rasterize that layer, so it's now just an image in the scene, and the computer knows that. The reason I've picked that up is obviously this white edge looks like it's going to be really nice and easy to select, so I've deliberately chosen this picture. So let's just go here. We could use a quick selection tool. This is going to help pick up edges. You see it's going to struggle when we get to this edge where there's quite a lot of white around there. It's picking up the wrong edge. You don't need to worry about this part of the selection out here. Obviously there's no pixels. What the computer's seeing is actually this. So that's okay. And again, that old Alt will remove, and Shift will add more in. But I don't like that. If I press Ctrl D, I can get rid of that selection. Let's try the other one. Magic Wand tool. You would think actually this might work. Well, it does work on the whole, and again I could go to the Quick Mask tool and start refining that edge just as I did before, and refining that selection. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go straight back out of that, and we'll press Ctrl D. I don't think this is the way forward. Immediately I'm going to move on. I could go and try using a color range selection and actually just click on an area within the image and make a color range, and I can change how much or how accurate that is with fuzziness, depending on the selection, and click OK to make that selection. That's again, it's not going to work for me. In fact, the best option is to not use a selection tool at all for this. So here we go. Instead, oh, that was a bit glitchy. There we go. So I just zoomed in a little bit, pressing Control Plus, and I'm just going to use this pen tool to pick up. In fact, I'll just pick up this lower edge here, this lower part of the image, because otherwise it'll take a little bit too long. No, I won't. I'll go around here a little bit so you can see how to select a curve as well. So click and let go with the pen tool, and that will draw a point with no tangent arms, being a straight line. Click and drag, and you start to generate a curve. So these two tangents are controlling curves. So let's just do those ones straight, that one straight, this one straight, and then let's have a look at that curve. Okay, now when I'm doing a curve, what I'm looking for is to get to the center of the curve, so about here, and then I'm going to drag out the tangent handles, so you can see the tangent handle at the bottom is controlling that curve from the center of that curve. It's pulling it around to shape it, and the one I'm holding on to will control the second half of this curve going towards the end of the curve. So you're always looking at putting that point in the middle, not doing lots of little ones that can get very time consuming. To do this quickly, you just put one in the middle, one at the end, and you've got that curve. You see how nicely that fits in there. It's not too bad at all. Now I'm just going to close that shape off without going around the rest of the watch. It would only take a minute more, and often once you've finished messing around with getting selections in other ways, this can often be the quickest way of making a selection. Now there's two ways. You can see that's drawn a path, it hasn't made a selection. Two ways to turn that path into a selection. I can right click over the line with the same tool selected and go make selection, or I could go to paths. So if I've deselected the path and the path still exists, I might need to get that back again, select it, and then I can go make selection, make selection here, and that will make the selection. It's saying, do I want to feather the radius? I don't in this case. I'm going to put 0. It's a hard edge image. I don't want to feather the radius. I want it to be nice and hard. So click OK. That's the selection. Let's go back to layers and copy and paste that out. Control C, Control V. Okay, so that's the selection I've got. Not too bad. Not too bad. Let's just put it onto the background image so that you can see it. And you can see here, it's not particularly nice all the way around. Particularly here, there's a little bit of white, and just down here. Let's zoom in on that so you can see what I'm talking about nice and clearly, in case the resolution's not good on this video. So there we go. I've got a little bit white there, very little, but it's not too bad. But let's just see if we can tidy that up a bit. Now it's actually quite easy to do. I'm just going to step back, Control Z to that selection, and I'm going to switch that on. And whilst I've got that selected, I'm going to go to Select, and I'm going to go to Refine Edge down here. Okay, now this tool is really useful, and it can often save you hours and hours trying to find edges, particularly when you've got something like hair that you're trying to get right. Immediately I've already told this to be on black so I can see what's happening. When you first see it like this, it's not particularly helpful, and again on white it's not particularly helpful, but in this case on black is working fine. So you need to select the view that helps you see the selection easiest. Now I'm going to just work on this edge here, and I've got this switched on to refine radius edge tool. I can turn up that radius a little bit, switch on smart radius actually, and again I can change some of this stuff, but first of all I'm going to draw in here. So I'm going to see if I can get rid of a little bit of that white line there. See what that does. It's not too bad, it's made a little bit of a mess of the pixels around here, so let's just see what happens if we pull some of these sliders up. See how that's cleaning up the edge. That's made it a little bit too harsh. There we go. Alright, so nice, that the white has totally gone now. We've got more of the shape of the edge there. Just need to sort that out there. I could maybe go in and do that with Alt press down. You can see it says minus. So I just want to remove that little bit from the edge. That's cleaned it up a bit. I can keep going with that until I'm happy. I'm quite happy with that now actually. You're not going to see that. So that's pretty nice. To export that, you can see it says output here. Decontaminate colors is really useful if you're using, like doing this with hair for example. We don't need to worry about it at the moment. I'm going to output that as a selection. There's various options down there you can explore. Click OK. Got my selection. Control C, Control V, and I've got my lovely watch out there with a slightly soft edge on one side of it, but you get the idea. Nice clean selection with a complex background now instead of the white background. So one thing to notice, I've gone through this whole process. I've got various different selections that I've made along the way, but I've still got my unharmed images, the original background and the original watch, and that's non-destructive editing, and it's a really important principle to take on board. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that's been useful. I'll catch up with you again soon.